temperature, says he's ready to serve the real masters, the people. Is PK planning to launch a political party? His decision likely to be made official later this week. The big Indian IPO reports say LIC gets bids of more than 10,000 crore rupees from anchor investors, over twice their initial quota. Ousted Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan faces arrest. Imran booked in a blasphemy case against Shahbaz Sharif and his delegation visiting Medina earlier this week.
Hottest April in 122 years. Peak summer still ahead. Power consumption breaks all records. All-time high demand of 207 gigawatts on April 29th. India short of 214 million units on peak demand day. $753 train trips cancelled to facilitate coal transport. The great Indian power crisis.
That's right. Our focus today, as we enter this critical month of May, with the temperatures rising, is India's power crisis that is worsening, with several states continuing to claim that they are running out of coal reserves. Haryana, Punjab, Jammu city reeling under 4 to 5 hour prolonged power cuts. It's coming at a time when an extreme heat wave is sweeping the country. Typically, a massive blame game is erupting over the crisis. The Delhi and Rajasthan chief ministers have sent SOSs to the centre over power crisis, claiming that they are not getting enough supplies. The centre, on the other hand, is refuting the claims of coal shortage and saying power plants have enough coal. The states, in many cases, have to simply pay up. Where does the truth lie? Tonight, we will first be talking to the politicians and then to the power experts. It's our top focus, the power crisis facing the country.
India is staring at a power crisis as coal reserves in several states are quickly running out. Several states across the country are reeling under long power cuts. In Jammu, people frustrated with power snags and disruption in water supply staged protests.
सर 2 प्रोजेक्ट यहाँ लगने थे बिजली के रोशनी एक्ट के अंदर जमीनें बेच करके वो डाकू पैसा खा गए।
कृपया लाइन पर बने रहें। आपकी कॉल ग्राहक सेवा प्रतिनिधि के पास स्थानांतरित की जा रही है।
An India Today reality check showed the calls to Uttar Pradesh helpline number giving little respite.
इस वक्त मौजूद हैं उसी हेल्पलाइन नंबर के ऑफिस में और ये आपको तस्वीरें में दिखा रहा हूँ। 1912 का ये ऑफिस है, लखनऊ में ये है और हम यहाँ पर कंप्लेंट्स ये हो रही हैं कि लोग जब इस नंबर को डायल करते हैं तो उनकी कॉल ही नहीं कनेक्ट हो रही।
बिजली तो सर इस समय इतनी कट रही है कि क्या बताएं। बिजली आती है जाती है, रात में काटती है, दिन में काटती है, दिन भर बिजली काट रही है इस समय।
पहले से बहुत अच्छी व्यवस्था है। पहले 4 घंटे बिजली आती थी, आज कम से कम 14 घंटे 15 घंटे बिजली या 12 घंटे मिल रही है।
Amid the raging crisis, Home Minister Amit Shah chaired high-level meet on Monday, which was attended by the Power Minister AK Singh and the Coal Minister Prahlad Joshi to discuss coal stock positions. Delhi, the first state to raise an SOS over deepening power crisis, said that it only had a day of coal left. Delhi government claimed lack of coordination and appealed to the centre to increase coal allocation to Delhi.
देश में 16 राज्यों में कोयले की कमी के चलते बिजली के बड़े-बड़े कट लग रहे हैं। कई घंटों के कट लग रहे हैं, कई जगह तो 20-20, 22-22 घंटे बिजली नहीं आ रही है। ये कोई आम आदमी पार्टी शासित पंजाब या आम आदमी पार्टी शासित दिल्ली की बात नहीं है, देश की बात है।
The centre rejected the claims, calling it panic mongering and bid to mislead by Delhi government. Centre also released the data showing that most power plants have enough coal for 5 to 8 days. Opposition was quick to take on the Modi government amid the crisis. Congress's Rahul Gandhi and SP chief Akhilesh claimed mismanagement by the centre. The prolonged hot spell, lack of rains and rising electricity demands adding to the summer woes. With Samarth Srivastav, Bureau Report, India Today.
So let's raise the big question at the very outset. Who is to blame for this power crisis, the centre or the state governments? Did the government, both at the centre and in the states, get their power planning horribly wrong? Peak summer ahead is the worst yet to come. And importantly, what are the solutions? I'll be joined by Siddharth Zarabi, Managing Editor, Business Today TV, Rohan Gupta, spokesperson of the Congress, and GVL Narasimha Rao, BJP MP. Later, we will be joined by Vinayak Chatterjee, Infrastructure Sector Expert and Chairman, National Infrastructure Council, and Harry Dowell of Director General, Independent Power Producers Association of India. Before I come to my guests, here's a graphic which will tell you about one of the reasons why this country is facing a potential serious power crisis, which is simply the payment crisis. Many experts say the crisis has to do with the payments cycle at the moment. Here's the problem in a nutshell. Distribution companies or discoms in states have accumulated losses worth 5 lakh crore rupees. These discoms in turn owe power generating companies or GenCos 1.1 lakh crore rupees. And these power generators owe Coal India 12,300 crore rupees. Let me come to you, GVL Narasimha Rao, first, because the government seems to be in denial mood. You speak to the Coal Minister Prahlad Joshi, he says there is no coal shortage. Speak to Power Minister AK Singh, he says there is no power crisis. And yet, the Home Minister had to hold an emergency meeting today. Yet, the fact is from state after state, particularly in North and Central India, we are receiving reports of power cuts and power shortages. Someone is not telling the truth to the people of the country. Is it the ruling BJP, sir, at the centre?
Rajdeep, the Power Minister, Sri RK Singh, was responding to the lies being propagated by the Delhi government, Aam Aadmi Party government, which, like last year also, they were spreading rumors and lies. And he said the numbers that they have put out are, in fact, they are not factual. There is enough coal stock within the thermal stations in Delhi. So he was referring in the context of certainly Delhi. So let's get that clear. Second, the central government has been urging the state governments to import coal to ensure that coal-based plants, import coal-based plants can operate to their full capacity or to an optimum capacity. The plant load factor in these import coal-based plants is only 66 or 67%. Okay, and the state governments are not willing to import. And the central government has also allowed them to mix imported coal to the tune of 10%, hiking it from 4%. The state governments, it is they who have actually been dilly-dallying imports. One reason for that is we can't blame the state governments as well, because the import coal prices have shot up 4 to 5 times in the last 1 year.
Yes.
And obviously we have to blame the the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which is certainly responsible for the hike in prices, because Russia is the third largest exporter of coal. So we certainly have to look at the international situation into account. And the parties like Rahul Gandhi, who only sees a crisis in power, but he doesn't see a crisis in the Congress party. I think Congress ruled Rajasthan, reports the highest power crisis in the country today. And let them explain why is it so. Rajasthan has reported a shortfall of 55 million units yesterday or 2 days ago. And that continues to be the worst performing state. And of the states that owe a large amount of money to the Coal India, you mentioned 12,000 crores. 4 states stand out. These are Maharashtra, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, and one more UPA rule state. These are the 4 UPA rule states, which the 4th one is Jharkhand.
Yes.
Maharashtra, West Bengal, Jharkhand, and Tamil Nadu. they have really been not paying up their dues to the Coal India.
Sir,
so
but
my question is,
sir, but the problem is national. You are cherry picking 108 out of 173 plants, domestic plus imported coal-based plants, have coal at critical levels. You at the last minute on Friday had to cancel passenger trains so that the coal could be transported in time. Clearly, the mood of denial was, while there are points that you make which surely need to be looked at seriously, there is a question, sir, about this mood of denial. Why doesn't the government accept that there is a crisis? You can only resolve a crisis when you accept there is a crisis. Just as you say, Rahul Gandhi targets the government reflexively, the government's reflex reaction is, don't worry, there is no crisis. There is a crisis on the ground. That is the reality.
No, Rajdeep, because there is a looming crisis, that's the reason why central government has given out advisories. We don't want to create simply a panic. You have to act, and the state governments here have to act. Let me tell you, the amount of power generation in the state sector is more than what is generated in the central government sector. The amount of power generated in the private sector is almost twice that of what is generated in the central government sector. So it's not entirely in the central government hands.
Okay.
The states have to import power. Private sector companies have to import power to run import-based power plants. And if they don't do it, because they don't want to, they see losing money in the proposition, they can't blame the central government for it. There is enough coal available, but it is available at a very steep cost. So do the states have the capacity to bite the bullet, or at least they should own up? They cannot blame the central government for not importing and not operating their plants.
Let Rohan Gupta respond. Rohan Gupta, when I put out those figures at the outset, the fact is that many of the state-run power plants, and this cuts across BJP and opposition-ruled states, are today running at grave losses. There's a cycle, as I pointed out, where the DISCOMs are running huge losses, where the power generating companies in turn are not being paid, and they in turn are unable to pay the Central Coal India. So there's a vicious cycle out there. To blame solely the government at the center and say this is all because of Narendra Modi, as Rahul Gandhi did today, is a tad unfair. This is a crisis that has been building up over the years. It's got worse over time because the dues simply remain unpaid.
See, Rajdeep, first of all, this is the first government which is in opposition even after being power for 8 years in center. This is the first government for all the crises, whether it is power crisis, whether it is inflation, whether it is petroleum crisis, whether it is GST, the states are responsible. Because this government time is going in other issues rather than doing governance. Rajdeep, you tell me whether governance is the issue of central government or opposition party. How can you deny that there is no crisis? This is the first problem with this government. Whether it was COVID or inflation or economy, they have always denied that there is crisis. You have rightly put that if you won't admit crisis, how will you resolve it? So anybody raises question on this government, please at least accept that there is crisis. They are not even ready to do that. That shows that why they are in denial mode. See, as you rightly put, 108 power plants out of 173 power plants are in serious shortage of coal. It's not in India, there is abundant coal supply. There is absolutely no issue. Let me remind you, in last year, October 2021, due to unseasonal rains, there was a shortage of coal. And then, there was this kind of situation which central government has faced. Why they have not learnt lessons out of that? IMD has clearly predicted that this monsoon is going to be very, very hot. Why government has not taken that in consideration and planned in advance? Because this government's time, obviously you have 24 hours in day. When this government is doing all other things, what we see in television, Hindu, Muslim, obviously they won't have time to do management. And when it comes to management, they will blame opposition party. This is not the first.
No, but opposition ruled states, and Rajasthan is a classic example, have also to answer questions about the manner in which they have handled their power supply.
See, Rajdeep, as again I have said, coal management is a central subject, right? It is responsibility of central government. Whoever are states, there are certain states which don't have coal supply. They have to manage from other states. There are power plants which are run by state governments. Obviously, it is state government's responsibility. And many governments have raised their issues of increasing the coal supply. Do you feel that this government listens to any of the demand? Yesterday, a few days back, PM was talking about, reducing VAT on petroleum. And he is not answering the question that GST of all the state governments have been pending for last so many months. So this is the hypocrisy of this government, where they do not want to show the right picture, where it is their government has completely failed as far as management is concerned or governance is concerned.
Let GVL have a response before I go to Siddharth Sarabi. GVL, this will end in the typical political blame game, but at some stage, there will be, the buck stops at the center, especially on issues like power supply, buck stops at the center. The inability, I come back to, involve the states in collective decision. We talk about cooperative federalism, and yet on issue after issue, we are seeing contentious polarization between the state and the center. That is not going to resolve the problem of the states that are facing a power shortage. This blame game will not resolve the crisis.
No, it's not a question of blame game. It's a power supply is a concurrent subject, and states cannot wash off their responsibility at one level. It's so ironical. At one level, they claim central government is trying to barge into their territory. But when power supply is, they have a duty, they have a mandate to provide power to the people at affordable prices. They want to run away from it. Central government, it's not the job of the central government to import coal and supply it to power plants in the states. It is your job. If you have not done your job, you own it up. You cannot indulge in political blame game at the BJP. You cannot target the BJP and shirk your responsibility, or just say, let us convert all this into central subjects. Let's have a discussion on this. Let's make drinking water, agriculture, power supply. Let us convert all this into the central list, so that states have no responsibility whatsoever.
It's not about not having any responsibility. It is about accountability. My worry is, at the moment, there seems to be a perceived lack of accountability. And Siddharth Sarabi, Coal Ministry says, I want you to explain this to our viewers. Coal Ministry says that Coal India Limited has reported an increase of 27.2% in its output in April 22 as compared to the year ago period. So that, to that extent, Coal India is saying there is no shortage. And yet emergency services have to be deployed on Friday. 90 passenger trains were cancelled. Now there is talk of many more trains being cancelled so that stocks are replenished. Where is the problem? Somewhere, something within the chain seems to have gone wrong.
Rajdeep, you asked me several questions. Allow me a little bit of time to quickly respond. Number one, the first fact, on Friday, we had reached our highest ever demand of 207 gigawatt. And as of yesterday, that went down by 14 gigawatt to 193 gigawatt. So the latest document and this data that I have from the National Load Dispatch Center says that as of 1st May, shortage during the maximum demand peak hours was in the state of Haryana and in the state of Uttar Pradesh, 345 megawatt and 170 megawatt respectively. As per this data, and there is no other data better than this, there wasn't a shortage during peak hours. The reality, Rajdeep, in 3 bullet points for the benefit of our viewers. Number one, the fact is that many state distribution companies are not buying power from generators. One, because the generators are not willing to extend further lending to them. And second, power rates have gone up and these discoms are either in bad financial state or are unwilling to pass on the cost to consumer due to political pressure of those state governments. That has resulted in load shedding as a way to curtail demand, which went up due to a completely unseasonal, once in a 50-year kind of weather environment. The second is, yes, there is a coal supply shortage and coal is supplied for power plants primarily by the railways, but the railways cannot do it on their own. If there is demand, only then can they, so railways cannot supply on their own. So because states and state generators are not getting, wanting extra coal prices have gone up, it will be wrong to blame the railways. And the railways have responded very, very well and in quick time. And finally, the third major point that I want to do and which I had taken down is that as far as the current situation is concerned, there are several private sector power plants which are not producing power, which have been mothballed due to financial issues that happened over the years due to the economic slowdown. It would have been quite easy, relatively easy to get them switched on. Unfortunately, they are being left idle, and we do not have an answer as yet to that situation.
Are you saying,
Yes,
therefore,
sir.
Siddharth Zarabi, that it is basically the dramatic increase in demand at this time because of the energy requirements, and is it a financially precarious condition in which many of these state electricity boards and discoms find themselves that is primarily responsible for the crisis?
A discom with two arms tied and one leg tied suddenly has to deal with 14% increase in demand, and a state government which doesn't want more metering, and a state government which does not want to touch holy cows of those who are given free power, and state governments and election reasons across the political spectrum which want more power. You can only expect them to do that much of a dance. Unfortunately, they cannot do disco with all three limbs tied.
You know, that is a question I want to raise with both the politicians. Rohan Gupta, you first. You know, there is a looming power crisis, and as we saw in this election, every political party in Punjab and in Uttar Pradesh in their manifestos said we will give free power. That, you know, at one level you talk of a power crisis and you know that the discoms are bleeding, and yet you talk of free power at election time. The thing is, it is impossible at the moment to see many of these discoms and state electricity boards becoming in the near future financially viable.
I agree with you, Rajdeep, and this is the problem with these new parties like Aam Aadmi Party and all.
It's true of all parties. It's true of all parties when it comes to free power.
I will answer your question. So even if you promise something free, there has to be management after that. It's not that if you see all the Congress government, even in Delhi, the power subsidies were always there, but we managed it well. Delhi was a surplus state when the Congress was in power with more than 60,000 crore rupees of surplus. Now today you see what is the situation of Delhi. So the issue here is not Rajdeep giving something free when obviously there is a particular class of society which is deprived and something is to be done. Yeah, you should be, but that it should be supported by the management around it. What I'm trying to tell you here is there was a trailer to this government in October 2021. Maybe due to other reasons there was a shortage. Only 4 days power supply was there. I think they should have learnt out of that. If this kind of situation is going to emerge, what is going to be their planning? IMD had given this warning clear-cut this time that this summer is going to be the hottest. I think government should have planned in advance, taken states in confidence, maybe organized meetings and all. And I think we wouldn't have seen this kind of situation. Today, blaming state governments and all, I think that's not correct. It is a primary responsibility of central government to ensure that even if there is increasing power demand, they have to meet. Now you just made a statement of Coal India saying that we increase our output by 25%. The objective of Coal India of central government is not increasing the production to meet the demand. Okay. Whatever is the demand, your governance should be capable.
There is no shortage.
The demand.
You know, the fact though is, GVL Narasimha Rao, that this is a moment where the ministry at the center needs to in some way be in constant communication with state governments. Now, I could be mistaken and maybe Siddharth can correct me, but what I am told by state governments, opposition ruled state governments, is that there has been very little communication between Delhi and state capitals. It could be, I could be mistaken. Yes, Siddharth.
Rajdeep, may I come in?
Yes.
Very quickly. There have been a spate of meetings, some of them known, some of them unknown, and I really cannot add value there. But there are two major points. There is no coal shortage. Blended coal has become expensive. Indonesian coal is expensive. If your pocket is empty and you want to eat at a 5-star, there will be problems. So I think, and let's face it, a bulk of India's power is consumed and a bulk of India's power is produced in the state sector. It is also true that in the last 7-8 years, we have invested in solar and renewable. But if you go around asking, has 20, 30, 40,000 of additional capacity been created in thermal, which is our mainstay and will remain for the next 30, 40 years. I think there's a policy mistake also that has happened. This climate thing we have taken over ourselves, and we now have at the highest temperatures people suffering. Yet I end by saying situation has improved in the last 3 days, and if the weather gods permit, we might still have some relief in the week ahead.
I'm going to be joined in a moment by Vinayak Chatterjee and Harry Daul for solution. But
Rajdeep.
one final point to you, GVL Narasimha Rao, because when I look at the numbers, the fact is BJP ruled states are also suffering as Congress ruled states are. So let's not make this about parties and politics. Power cuts across the opposition government divide, or should cut across. Power belongs to all states, all citizens.
Yeah, Rajdeep, as I told you, here are the numbers. The central sector power generation is only 99,000 megawatts. The states do even more, 105,000 megawatts. And the private sector is the total of these two together, 195,000 megawatts. So certainly it's not the government of India that is producing, or government central generation companies that are generating all the power. They account for less than a fourth of the total generation of power. And as regards imported coal prices having gone up, while your indigenous production of coal has increased, the prices have gone up internationally, and somebody has to foot the bill. And you can't expect the central government to foot all the bill.
Right. Okay.
So, and there is no communication record. There has been a communication between the center and the states, but it's obvious. Everybody knows at what price you can buy imported coal and what is the landed cost of imported coal. Their unwillingness to foot the bill pass on possibly the cost to the consumers. And this government has made massive efforts in restructuring the power sector. Under Atmanirbhar Bharat package itself, we have lent out nearly 1.3 lakh crores to the DISCOMs to come out of their.
The fact is that the DISCOMs are still facing a crisis. Relevant. The fact is DISCOMs at the moment are still facing a huge financial crisis. I want to leave it there. We've heard the political arguments. Let's turn to our expert. Vinayak Chatterjee is infrastructure sector expert, chairman, National Infrastructure Council at CII. Harry Daul is a long-standing Director General, Independent Power Producer Association of India. I want you to give solutions, Vinayak Chatterjee. You've heard the politicians. There is still those who will say there isn't a coal shortage. There is a power management issue at the moment, plus the demand has increased, plus there's politics being played out. You provide us the solutions, Vinayak Chatterjee, today.
I will. And thank you for having me on the discussion, Rajdeep. I think much data, much discussion, much heat has been thrown around. Let me share 3 perspectives with you. One, in management jargon, this whole event is what would be called a white swan event, which means that it has occurred in the past, has reasonable frequency, has medium probability of happening, and is entirely preventable. So this is called a white swan event. So that's one, and therefore there are learnings to it, and I'll come to the solutions. The second issue to discuss or to present is that there is no one reason. There is no one reason, as you've seen in the discussions, from Coal India's shortage of production to economic rebound to unprecedented summer heat to high price of imported coal to sharp spike in railway rates demand to the dismal situation of DISCOMs. There are 7, 8, 9, 10 and political largesse and giveaways. There are about 10 wheels within wheels that are all moving together. So this is a confluence of circumstances that have happened. And finally, the perspective is what is simply called jaws of the alligator, which is that the demand, as has been said earlier, has been growing at 14%, clearly seen, whereas coal output in FY22 over FY21 has grown by only 4%. So I think that's the nub of the problem, that there is the jaws of the alligator. Demand has far outstripped coal supply for whatever reason. Now, you asked me for solutions. So since I think the important thing is, one, these events like these enable one to talk about what the country needs to do or should have done. And that really is the solution looking forward. As the saying goes, when the tide runs low, you know who's swimming naked. And therefore, let me outline for you some of the issues that should have required greater focus, greater resolution, and still can be done. One is the diversification of our energy basket. We can't have a nation where 70 to 75% of power generation decade after decade is only by coal and now gradually, hopefully, replaced by to some extent by renewables. We have neglected hydro hugely as a country. We have not made progress on the nuclear civil deal after 2008. And we have let gas completely escape attention in terms of it being an equally viable energy source. That's one. So diversifying our energy base is a solution. The excessive focus on renewables has led to taking our eyes off the ball so far as thermal coal is concerned. And therefore, instead of this general mood of, shall we say, global warming and etc., we have moved very fast away from coal thermal. The move should have been far more gradual in terms of allowing some fresh investments to come up in a graded manner, so that the economy did not feel the shocks. Coal India, I think the 2 years of COVID depressed economic activity and the lack of demand, as has been said by the political people on the panel, have led to a certain inertia in Coal India's production. It should have reached 850 million tons, where even the coal minister in parliament has said that the target is to be 1200 million by 23-24. So if the target is 1200 million by 23-24, surely Coal India can't be operating at the level of 750 or whatever they're operating at now. The trajectory of coal output increase has certainly slowed down, and the jaws of the alligator have suddenly caught it off guard.
But essentially, you're calling for a diversification of resources, right? You're calling for a diversification of our energy resources. So we are not dependent, in a sense, anymore on a single source for our power needs. Am I correct?
Correct, Rajdeep. But also, India has strengths in hydro. We have huge untapped potential, which we have been talking for decades, but it does not receive political and bureaucratic attention, unfortunately. And secondly is the civil nuclear power deal, which I think the Manmohan Singh government staked its reputation on that deal. And we moved very close to India ramping up its nuclear production, which today, by the way, the rest of the world is warming up again after the Ukraine crisis. We need to do something quickly to focus again on nuclear. We have to reform the power distribution sector. It is the tail that wags the dog of the power sector.
But the government claims they've done that. Let me take that. No. But the government claims it is reforming the power distribution sector. You heard GVL Narasimha Rao claiming that this has been one of the achievements of the government. And the fact is, the jury is out on that. Because when I look at the state of the DISCOM company, they're still struggling. So while the government has the right intentions, the government
has announced scheme after scheme of trying to motivate DISCOMs to reform. But we have passed the stage of motivation. I think the use of the term surgical strike actually describes the amount of focused attention and decisive political action.
What would that surgical strike be? What would that surgical strike be?
The surgical strike really would be to actually force the DISCOMs to look at private participation in their operations. That does not necessarily mean selling the family silver. It just means there are many options, from management operation to franchisees to outright privatization to even insisting that, like we are doing Nal Se Jal, that all households will have water by 2024 or 100% houses will have electricity. Why can't we have a scheme that 100% will have smart meters? So basically, the time has come when, after 3 decades of waiting for the DISCOM staff and the DISCOM itself to reform itself, the time is gone.
Okay,
so the surgical strike would mean a slew of options. There are options across the spectrum of how to get private sector into the management of the electricity distribution. So that is what I would call the surgical strike.
Will that, Harry Daul, would that be a solution? Let Harry respond, who's worked with independent power producers, because the track record, again, there is a mixed one. It's not as if independent power producers have stepped up to the plate to ensure that the power crisis doesn't loom in the way it is at the moment.
You know, I would like to start off with the point that was raised about surgical strike by you, Rajdeep. I would say 3 things. Rescue the DISCOMs, rescue Coal India, and rescue the power producers. Okay, those are the 3 things. And the point is, I think the government of the day is on top of the job. They're doing a damn good job. Today they had a meeting. And my suspicion is that the meeting they had is going to have something like the following. There'll be a financial restructuring of the debts of DISCOMs. Second, should be, and I hope there will be, a restructuring and protection of all power producing assets in the country, private or public. If they are having a debt problem from discoms, they should be protected by way of a moratorium. This moratorium should be for a short phase of 3 years or 5 years, and it should be set off against the amount that the discoms owe these generating companies. So banks can come in and work it out. In fact, I would say REC and Power Finance Corporation, which are under the direct control of the Ministry of Power, can do it ASAP. The third thing is that you need to appreciate that Coal India is being blasted left, right, and center for this, that, and the other. The fact of the matter remains that the whole system has to become more efficient. And I agree with Vinayak on the point that we need to have private management wherever necessary to improve the efficiency and to get rid of the inefficiencies about supply, about mining, etc., etc. Looking at the situation as it is today, I would say that we are in serious trouble, not just from what you see in the next few days, but also the weather forecast of the El Nino and the other phenomenon that's taking place.
So what would be the immediate solution? Because at the moment, the government solution is being to tell the states, go ahead, import coal. The states more or less are saying, look, we can't import it at the prices and we are being asked to import the coal.
Please understand, it takes 4 months to get the coal in. That's not going to work immediately, right? What you need to do is get the assets which are already there, which are stranded or stopped or stuck in some form or the other, because the fact that discoms are not paying them, can be immediately started. And since there is coal availability, okay, I think that should be the immediate solution. That should be the immediate focus. And I think it is, because I believe today the Honorable Home Minister and the Power Minister had some meetings with some people to try and get this off the ground. So I think that's a fantastic thing. I mean, this government is on the job and is taking care of a very, very crazy situation of high temperatures and the fact that, in spite of the fact that you're moving 400, 500, 600 million tons of coal, you're still facing a crisis.
Okay.
Also, the fact that demand has gone up. Someone told me very interestingly that the Delhi peak has shifted from the normal 5 o'clock in the evening to 8 o'clock. It's gone up from 5 o'clock to 2 in the morning because everyone's got an air conditioner in the house. So they need power, for a much longer period and a lot more.
Right.
The other thing that worries me is you are stopping industry from getting coal. That's aluminium, steel, cement. These are all critical for infrastructure. So what are we going to do with that? I think that's another concern which we need to flag. But immediately, as I said, you need to have intervention from the central government to bail out the discoms, bail out the IPPs who are getting wiped out because of the
But as you said, but that could again result in a vicious cycle. That won't resolve the problem, but that will at least, you're saying temporary, is a temporary solution. What we are eventually going to lead
is a temporary solution, but it gives you 3 to 5 years within which you add the capacity which Vinayak is talking about.
Okay.
And he's right that we are not adding enough thermal capacity in this country. We don't have gas as an alternative at a viable price, and we have no way of taking that forward.
Okay,
I think that's what we need to do.
Let me leave it there, gentlemen. We've had a discussion that I hope sheds more light than heat in the time that we live in. And I think what we need is more light, really, than heat. And that might, in a way at least, if the temperatures drop a bit, reduce some of that power demand. But Vinayak Chatterjee, Harry Daul, I appreciate your joining me here tonight with your solutions and giving us, in a way, a non-partisan approach to an issue that unfortunately has again got caught in a political blame game. The power crisis in the country, the real issues that matter, and hopefully the news without the noise. When we return, we'll turn to our good news story, the inspiring story of India's newfound fast-bowling sensation. From Jammu, why is Umran Malik making all the headlines at the moment? Back in a moment. You're watching the news today. News without the noise.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com or call 9999 892171.
COVID-19, an infection that shook the world and transformed our lives. 2 years on, we have learned to live with the virus. 5 variants of concern have been in circulation, and the last reported variant of concern, Omicron, is mutating. The World Health Organization has warned about mutating variants, saying the viruses will continue to change form and also variants that will come together to form recombinants. What is a recombinant virus then? A virus that is a hybrid version of 2 strains of a previous virus is a recombinant. Recently, the United Kingdom Health Security Agency said that there are 3 recombinant strains. XD, which is a hybrid of Delta and BA1 Omicron variant. XC, which is a recombination of BA1 and BA2 variants of Omicron. And XF, another hybrid of Delta and Omicron. Let's tell you about XC first. Where in the world have recombinants been found? Well, the WHO has warned about the evolved Omicron variant or recombinant virus XC. The body says it will classify XC under the Omicron umbrella until significant differences in transmission and disease characteristics, including severity, may be reported. It was first detected in the UK in January 2022, beginning of this year, and a very limited number of cases have been found in China and Thailand. While the recombinant XC is still being studied, initial reports suggest the virus has a community growth rate advantage of 10% as compared to the BA2 strain of Omicron, which has been categorized as the most transmissible strain so far. The WHO says that some media have misreported the potential growth advantage of 10% as 10 times. This is incorrect. If the 10% increase in growth is confirmed, this variant would actually just be 1.1 times more transmissible, not 10 times. Well, since it's a genetic mutation of 2 strains of existing variant, the symptoms remain the same: fever, scratchy and sore throat, skin irritation and discoloration, gastrointestinal distress, palpitation, etc.
When it's the world's biggest news story, there's only one gold standard of journalism.
Welcome back. Let's turn to our good news today story. And it is a wonderful story about a young man who's making all the waves in the IPL. He's being called the Jammu Express. And no, he's not a train, but he's India's newfound pace bowling sensation. He's the fastest bowler now in the country, clocking upwards regularly at 150 kilometers per hour. The rise of Umran Malik from tennis ball cricket and from the land of Jammu and Kashmir is a story that is bringing a smile to all sports fans. Take a look at Umran's rise.
India's newest bowling sensation, the fastest bowler in the country, one who consistently bowls 150 plus kilometers per hour thunderbolts. Nicknamed the Jammu Express for he hails from India's northernmost territory, Umran has become a household name, all thanks to the Indian Premier League. But not many know about his humble origins and his tryst with the IPL. His father, Abdul Rashid, is a fruit and vegetable vendor in Jammu. And in the past, when Umran would step out to play tennis ball cricket at night, his father would secretly follow to keep a check on his son's activities. Now that his son's performances have floored the entire nation, Rashid Sahab is ecstatic that his Umran is being showered with love from all quarters.
पूरे जम्मू और कश्मीर को मेरी तरफ से मुबारकबाद है, पूरे देश को मुबारक है जितना इतना बड़ा प्यार दिया मेरे बच्चे को और अच्छा खेल रहा है। उधर जाके बहुत कुछ सीखता है इंसान, इधर गली कूचों में खेला हुआ है तो उधर बड़े-बड़े प्लेयरों के साथ खेल रहा है, हमको बहुत बड़ी खुशी है।
Even as Umran is now part of the big league, earning the big bucks, his family still hasn't given up on their daily jobs. For now, they are only hoping for their son to play for Team India, to make the nation of over 1.3 billion proud.
तो आने वाले टाइम में अपने देश के लिए खेले, अपने देश का नाम रोशन करे। आपा कहता है मैंने अपनी कंट्री के लिए खेलना है, इंडिया के लिए खेलना है, मैंने इंडिया खेलना है। तो ऊपर वाला देखो मेहनत करेगा बच्चा तो आगे जाएगा।
Umran's first foray into the IPL is also a story for the ages. It was Abdul Samad, a friend and a fellow Sunrisers Hyderabad player from Jammu and Kashmir, who first suggested Umran's name as a net bowler. And having impressed the coaching staff in training where he troubled even the likes of David Warner, Umran was drafted into the squad as a replacement for T. Natarajan, who was ruled out due to COVID.
Good evening, Danny Morrison.
बहुत सीखने को मिला इंडिया टीम के साथ रहना, बहुत अच्छा प्राउड फील था मेरे लिए। फर्स्ट था और अच्छा को मिला वहाँ पे। रवि शास्त्री सर थे, अरुण सर थे, विराट बस धोनी से। और उसके बाद में एक्सपीरियंस में खेलने का अच्छा प्राउड फील होता है अपनी कंट्री के लिए जब खेलो तो सीखने को मिलता है बहुत।
Even though he only played 3 games in the UAE leg last season, SRH saw the immense potential and decided to retain him ahead of this year's IPL. With 15 wickets already this season, Umran is already knocking on the doors of Team India. His rapid rise to stardom is just the start, for every Indian cricket fan is rooting for this young boy from Jammu and Kashmir. With Sunil Ji Bhatt in Jammu, Sports Bureau, India Today.
The wonderful story of Umran Malik. And I want to leave you tonight with a story that should get all of us thinking. In India, the politicians seem to lack a sense of humor. Cartoonists get arrested. Those who criticize the government often are also targeted. But look at the United States, where this weekend, on Sunday in fact, after a 6-year-long break, US President Joe Biden resumed the tradition of speaking at the annual White House dinner. Well, comedian Trevor Noah was the featured speaker at the dinner, and he took several digs at President Joe Biden over rising gas prices and rent. The president laughed. In India, what would happen to a Trevor Noah? Well, you never know. Think about it, and maybe that's why at times we need to look at the West also for certain democratic traditions, including that of a truly free and independent press that can ask questions of their leadership, which doesn't call them anti-national for making those jokes. I leave you tonight with a few excerpts from the event ahead of World Press Freedom Day tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Stay well, stay safe. Good night, Shubh Ratri. Let's hope for better times. Bye for now.
Fox News, I'm really sorry your preferred candidate lost the last election. There's one reason why it's great to be here again. Everyone at the White House is so excited. I told my grandkids and Pete Buttigieg they could stay up late and watch this show tonight.
I think ever since you've come into office, things are really looking up. You know, gas is up, rent is up, food is up, everything. No, it really has been a tough first year for you, Mr. President.
And Trevor, the really good news is now you get to roast the President of the United States. And unlike in Moscow, you won't go to jail.
So, you know, in recent times, this thermal gun has become a very, very popular device which you will find in all public spaces. Anywhere you go, you will find somebody noting down your temperature using this device. And recently, the Delhi government has issued a notice that this device is essential outside all schools. No student can enter school premises without being monitored for their body temperature. How does it work exactly? And how accurate is it? We're going to tell you what this thermal gun is all about. So, you know, body temperature is a very clear-cut giveaway sign for COVID symptoms. It's the first thing you would want to check while interacting with anybody coming from outside. This gun comes in handy. Why? Because A, it reads your temperature very quickly, and secondly, it can note your temperature without having any physical contact with the object or with the subject. So basically, when you point this at a subject or a human body, how is it noting the temperature? You see, this device is mainly made up of 3 things. There is a laser, there is a converging lens, and then there is an IR sensor inside it. All these 3 will come together to represent the temperature in digital format, which will be visible on the screen which you have behind it. Now, as soon as the gun is pointed towards a body, there is a laser which helps pinpoint where it needs to mark the temperature from. Now, coming to the mechanics of it, first of all, it is pointed towards a human body. Now, to just explain to you, every human body has a certain amount of thermal radiation which is emitted from it. The laser in this device is used to pinpoint towards the human body. Then the infrared sensor in this device will read the amount of radiation being emitted, the thermal radiation being emitted from the human body. That through the converging lens is then read by a thermopile. Thermopile is basically a device which helps to convert thermal energy into electrical energy. And after that, the temperature is represented on the digital screen. Is it harmful to use on kids? Well, scientifically, various experts have suggested that this statement is incorrect because the thermal gun only measures with infrared radiation that is reflected at all times by all objects around us, including human bodies. It does not use radioactive beams such as X-rays, only infrared. Thermometer guns are also FDA approved. It functions automatically. It is touchless, which is the need of the hour, and it functions automatically. It just requires you to press one button. It detects the temperature of the person from a range of 5 to 10 centimeters. Now, these thermal guns are useful because essentially they are quick. Temperature readings are obtained at a much quicker pace than traditional methods. Using a temperature gun reduces the risk of cross-contamination and spreading disease due to its non-contact approach. It is the safest bet at the moment. Now, are they accurate? Now, talking about the accuracy of this device, if we were to consider a traditional thermometer which you would place in the mouth to note body temperature, usually 98.4 degrees Celsius is considered normal. But when you are noting temperature using this device, a degree or two lesser than that is also considered normal. 98.4 in this device would mean fever. Other than that, how accurate this device is, well, there needs to be more study on it. It cannot be considered as a conclusive evidence of whether you are infected with COVID or not, or whether you have fever or not. But yes, it does help you get a decent idea about what your body temperature is.
When it's the world's biggest news story, there's only one gold standard of journalism. When it's the world's biggest news story, there's only one gold standard of journalism.
You know Kim Tae-hyung, aka V of pop group BTS fame? Well, he's simultaneously 26, 27 and 28 years old. Confused? How old were you when you were born? 0? 1? In South Korea, you'd be 1 year old. Let's clear the air about this. South Korea has a unique way of calculating age. When a baby is born, it's considered a year old. And as the year changes on January 1st, the child gains a year. So no special birthdays. South Koreans count age based on their birth year and not days. A child born in December will already be 2 by January. But the president-elect Yoon Suk-yeol wants to do away with this traditional system. Because of persistent confusion and unnecessary social and economic costs, the incoming administration is looking to standardize age calculation. This was observed especially when health authorities use the international age and Korean ages interchangeably to set guidelines for COVID-19. This will also help South Korea get in line with the rest of the world. The age conundrum doesn't end here. South Korea also counts age in an international way. That means it counts age in 3 ways. For legal and administrative purposes, the country has been using the international counting system since 1962. In another way, babies are born at 0 and gain a year on New Year's. This method is mainly used to define the legal age for areas of law that affect a significant percentage of the population, including military service conscription. And the third is the Korean age system, where everyone is already a year old at birth and become older on New Year's Day regardless of the birth date. That's how Kim Tae-hyung from BTS fame is simultaneously 26, 27 and 28 years old, as he was born on 30th December 1995. There are multiple problems that arise with age discrepancies. It's led to wage disputes that have been dragged to the Supreme Court and ruled that workers should consider their international age for work. There have also been cases of parents trying to cheat the birth registration system because of worries that their children born in December will be at a disadvantage at school as a result later in life. Efforts were made in 2019 and 2021 to change the law. 2 lawmakers proposed legislation to adhere to the international age, but experts are divided on what the new measure means for Korean society, and the bills were not signed into law.
Действительно уникальное оружие будет укреплять боевой потенциал наших вооруженных сил. Надежно обеспечит безопасность России от внешних угроз и заставит задуматься тех, кто в пылу оголтелой агрессивной риторики пытается угрожать нашей стране.
Putin wants his enemies to think twice before threatening Russia, as he claims to have one of the world's most powerful missiles. Russia test-launched the Sarmat missile, a new nuclear-capable intercontinental ballistic weapon. So how powerful is the weapon, and should his enemies be really worried? As per Russian media, Sarmat is a 3-stage liquid-fueled missile with a range of 18,000 kilometers. The missile is 35.3 meters long and 3 meters in diameter. But what makes it so unique and powerful is its mechanism to elude anti-missile defense systems.
In association with Men of Platinum. Modi Euro dash in shadow of Ukraine war. PM tour in wake of fight over neutrality. PM's Atmanirbhar foreign policy in action. Massive West expectations from India's Modi. India's neutrality forges shining new path. Spotlight on Modi's India during big war.
And the Prime Minister made it very clear, there are no winners in war. He's advocated dialogue for peace as a way forward. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Berlin. He'll be spending about 65 hours in Europe, traveling across 3 countries, Germany today, Denmark tomorrow, and France day after, having 25 events, meeting 8 world leaders. But in a